Good afternoon. Welcome to the inaugural Mentoring Hub Grand Rounds. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Georgeann McGuinness, who's an extraordinarily talented mentor at all levels. She's currently Associate Dean for Mentoring and Professional Development and Director of Clinical Faculty Mentoring at NYU Langone Hospital. And she's also a departmental leader in the radiology department, professor and senior vice chair of radiology and vice chair of academic affairs. Her multifaceted mentoring prowess and accomplishments at NYU are completely renowned, but I personally have had the distinct honor of working with Dr. McGuinness in the Society of Thoracic Radiology Mentoring committee, where she served as the first chair for 6 years. And she created this amazing program, creating mentoring dyads between society members who were senior mentors, as well as more junior members who were mentees. And the committee was extremely inclusive. It included mentors and mentees within the committee. And she inspired so many people to engage in the process. And every year we had more volunteer mentors than mentees, which is an extremely unusual situation. And every year there was creation of very well-matched mentoring dyads for a variety of different aspects of mentoring, including, not just like writing papers, in fact, less about writing papers because these were disparate institutions, and more about helping people like navigate the workplace, professional development, and a lot of really important aspects of mentoring that people don't really think about that often. And so it's really been an inspiration for me to basically work in a committee led by Dr. McGuinness, who's really a complete master. She's also an accomplished academician and a superb clinician, clinical chest radiologist. She has numerous seminal publications, and she's fascinating presentation. She's a great teacher, as the residents can attest by this morning's lecture. And I've had the pleasure of benefiting from her collegiality and learning from her wisdom over the years. We were fellows in the same year in the New York region, although not in the same place, so we've known each other for a long time. And I am looking forward to this afternoon's presentation, but before we get to it, I want to invite one of her former mentees, our distinguished colleague, Dr. Amy Rabinowitz, to say a few words.
Okay, so first, Georgia, I'm totally surprised by this, but first, I want to give a big shout out to our very own Dr. Linda Haramati, our Chief Mentoring Officer here at Yale, who is not only a phenomenal cardiothoracic radiologist, but she is an all-around wonderful person. And Linda herself has mentored countless medical students, radiology residents, fellows, anyone who crosses her path. She is a natural mentor to, and including half of our amazing chest radiology section that's here today, that's here now, Dr. Anna Bader, Dr. Tarek El-Khadi, and Dr. Leah Traub. So we are so fortunate to have Linda here at Yale, and I still can't believe that you're here. So big shout out to Linda, and absolutely fantastic choice for a Grand Round speaker. So just to talk about Georgeann, just very briefly, when a few years ago, when I was a radiology resident at NYU, I always thought I was going to be a neuroradiologist. My father was a brilliant neurologist, and that's the path I thought I was going to take. And no offense to the neuroradiologists in the department or any of the residents who want to go into neuro, but when I rotated through chest, and again, I was dead set on being a neuroradiologist, I rotated through chest, and not just with Georgeann, but we had amazing chest radiologist at NYU. But I met her and I'm like, wow, this is really an incredible woman, and I want to be just like her. And I knew that there was no plastic surgeon in the world that I could find that could make me tall, blonde, thin, and beautiful. But I was like, but maybe I could be a great chest radiologist like she is. So then, thus my mind changed. I ended up being her fellow at NYU as well in chest imaging, and yeah, whether she realizes it or not, she has been an inspiration to me, to many others, an amazing mentor, and I'm so excited she's here today and very much looking forward to her talk. So.
I don't know that I've ever had such a gracious and warm and complimentary introduction. So thank you both. I almost was ready to sit down and just go more and more. So I'm going to talk about mentorship. And I am, as you'll see, going to talk about mentorship on many levels, institutional, departmental, and because I understand my audience is mixed, there are mentors in the audience and mentees in the audience. It's a little hard to know how to hit this. So I tried to put together kind of a global approach of mentorship programs, talking about their value, feasibility, the obstacles and pitfalls you may see as you put together and try to keep a program running, and to talk about it from all angles. So the objectives for this talk are to outline the fundamentals of a workable and feasible mentorship program. Mentorship programs should be aspirational, but they do have to work. So they have to be feasible and practical. I'm going to review the roles and responsibilities of the various participants in the program, and that group, that cohort, is broader than perhaps you might think. To maximize the value of the endeavor for all the participants, and here I'm just saying mentors and mentees, but there's actually value across the board, and to identify obstacles and pitfalls in launching a mentorship program. By the way, I did not thank Dr. Haramati for inviting me and Dr. Goodman for hosting, so forgive me for that. We were chatting beforehand, but it's a pleasure to be here. And to the residents, I really enjoyed teaching you this morning. You're a good group. Forgive me for that. So I'm going to talk about, just sort of run through a brief highlight of the program that I've enacted at the NYU Grossman School of Mentoring, talk about what makes a program work and why it doesn't work when it doesn't work. I have incorporated into the talk some scenarios, which is going to put a little bit of a burden on you in the audience to participate a little bit. And then I'm going to talk about endings, because I will end my talk, and that part of the talk is maybe a little bit just playful. So what did we do at NYU? I got involved in mentorship in the Department of Radiology, but when the institution, for various reasons, realized that they needed to beef up the mentorship program for faculty, they asked me to chair a task force, which I did, and we did all the hard work. It took about 2 years. We did the surveys and the needs assessment and figured out really what is necessary. We wrote a white paper, and the white paper was accepted by the deans, and part of the white paper said we need an office for mentorship and professional development, and they accepted that part of the paper and said, and gee, by the way, would you like to be the associate dean in this office? So this is a good, actually, mentoring moment. Sometimes opportunities don't exist, but you create a role, you create an opportunity, you see a need for something. Like vice chair of education in radiology, that didn't exist. And now most departments have vice chairs of education, but it didn't exist. And then I became the vice chair of education, because you sell the idea to the chair that a vice chair of education is going to help the department, going to help the educational program, help the trainees, et cetera, et cetera. So we now have at NYU Grossman a very unique institutional mentorship program with institutional oversight, based in the departments, but run at the institutional level with full thickness buy-in and commitment. And you'll see what I mean by that. Every department or institute has a mentoring champion. I tried to come up with a better name. I know the idea of mentoring champion, you kind of imagine somebody in tights with a cape. And I'm sorry, it sounds sort of frivolous, but I really couldn't think of a better name. So we have mentoring champions, and we have mandated mentorship for specific faculty cohorts that is monitored for a lot of different reasons. Now, a quick overview of some of the fundamental precepts for this program. Top-down and bottom-up commitment. And by that, I mean, the bottom-up is easy. Most mentees want mentors. That's easy. But it's coming all the way from the dean down. So we have mentors, mentees, mentoring champions, the chair, the dean, all involved in the process with goals and responsibilities. Establishing the culture of mentorship, it's really ingrained into the fabric of our culture at NYU. Mentorship is a given, it's an expectation, and it is just part of our culture. Part of that, to make that work, you have to acknowledge and valorize mentorship as an activity of the faculty, and thereby you have to value and acknowledge and recognize your mentors. So we're going to talk about all of this. The other thing that became very apparent to me as I was rolling this out on an institutional level is it absolutely does not work in terms of a one-size-fits-all, because we probably very much like Yale, we have some basic science departments, cell biology, where virtually everybody is on the tenure track. The department has 15 people in it, and there's only 3 or 4 people at the assistant professor level anyway. Mentorship in that department is going to be very different than the Department of Medicine, where there's, 500 or 1,500 faculty, or even radiology. I think we're up to 278 faculty, and some of them are scientists, PhDs, and a lot of people are clinical. The point being, mentorship programs have to be tailored to the specific department, and my job is to help each mentoring champion come up with a program that works for them. When I'm in the audience where you are, and somebody puts up a slide and says, now this is a very busy slide and I know you can't read it, my eyes roll into the back of my head and internally I start screaming, so why did you put it up? Why are you wasting our time on a slide that nobody can read? And I also think, and this is a person who needs to be mentored on how to give a good talk. So you're then going to say, well, then why the heck is she showing this slide? The reason I'm about to show a slide that you can't read is it really is emphasizing that all of the stakeholders in the process, from the mentees to the mentors, to the mentoring champion, to the chair, to the deans, all of them have goals for the process, but all of them have responsibilities. It is a bidirectional process and everybody has responsibilities. So the dean's responsibility is to ensure involvement of the chairs and to ensure accountability. And I'm not going to go into the details of how we monitor this. If anybody wants to know, I'd be delighted to talk to you, but we don't really have time. But the chairs have to empower the mentoring champion and on and on and on. I mean, the mentees, what are they? Their goals are career success. That's pretty straightforward. But really, what are the goals for the mentor? That's a little bit tougher. We're going to talk about engaging mentors in a minute. So that's why I'm showing you a very busy slide you couldn't read. Now, hopefully you can read this slide. And I was trying to get a lot of stuff on a slide and it was tough. But these are some of the obstacles, pitfalls, and potential solutions. And we'll work our way through this a little bit. So engagement of mentees, as I said, that's usually pretty easy because mentees, they want to advance their careers. And most people now, coming through medical school and through training programs, they understand that mentorship is valuable and they want to be mentored. And you can engage them to begin with a needs assessment, a needs survey and so forth, but it's usually pretty easy. So I was encouraged to, Dr. Haramati encouraged me to put scenarios into this talk. And I don't exactly know how this is going to work because usually scenarios work very well in workshop settings, but maybe not in sort of a grand round setting, but we're going to give it a shot. So Dr. Z is running his department's mentoring program. He performs a needs assessment. And the survey asks the junior and mid-level faculty, is there a specific faculty member you want for a mentor? And to his surprise, a disproportionate number of the junior faculty request the same 3 faculty, whether or not there's an obvious convergence in research, clinical, or career interests. He couldn't help but note to himself that these are also amongst the 3 most prolific in the department, and therefore amongst the busiest. So why might junior faculty all want to be mentored by the same 3 people? Well, there's an obvious one, right?
Very easy to approach.
They're approachable, they're nice, they're likable. They're successful and prolific. So the successful is a little bit more nuanced. I'm repeating because there's people that aren't here. Natural role models, likable, prolific, and so forth. Well, that is absolutely true. And this happens on the resident level too. a lot of the residents or the junior faculty asked to be mentored by the same people. And these are the people who seem to publish a paper every 45 minutes. None of us can quite figure out how they do it, but they figure if this is the person who's mentoring me, he or she is gonna put me on some projects or mentor me through this. And it's gonna have a high probability that I'm going to publish a lot. You can translate that, by the way. A lot of these slides are kind of focused on clinical researchers, but you can translate them to other roles, education, leadership, administrative roles. This is absolutely true. They also are the people, Dr. Goodman said, you know, they're successful. They tend to be connected. They can act as sponsors. But what mentees need to recognize is that mentors can play important roles outside of research or the traditional roles. And you can have mentorship in career development, in many other aspects of your career. You may want to be mentored by somebody who is in a realm that isn't publishing in the traditional clinical research sense, but is involved in wellness or is involved with operations, safety, and efficiency or outcome. I mean, all sorts of different things. People need to understand the breadth of potential mentors. And yeah, they are likable and approachable. So how do you avoid this? I limit the number of mentees that mentors can have because these people that are very prolific get overloaded. And you can't mentor. I mean, it's part of my job to mentor, so I actually mentor a lot of people, but I'm not talking about me. Just your average faculty member, if they're mentoring more, I cap it at 2 if I possibly can. Once in a while, I'll ask someone if they mind taking a 3rd. But for the most part, if you overload the mentors, they become ineffective. How do you then deal with it? This is going to be a recurring theme in this talk. You train the mentors, you pipeline mentors, you recruit mentors, you develop mentors. I was saying to Linda last night as she's rolling out, which I'm sure is going to be a fabulous program, the sweat equity as you're rolling this out should be focused on the mentors, not the mentees. You've got to build your stable of your cadre of good mentors, and that's what's going to make the program successful. And what I said, establish that it's not only research mentorship. So I think we talked, am I going the right way? Engagement of the mentors. So this is what I'm talking about. Make mentorship part of the culture of the department. And that should come from the chairs and you know, sort of top down, but also make it easy for the mentors, what I call greasing the skids. Give them training seminars, give them templates of documents. I talk to people about mentorship and they're like, I don't really know how to mentor. I don't really think I got good mentorship. I've only been a faculty member for 7 years and I don't really know how to, you know, back off, back off, back off. And then, so I've made these encounter forms that show the list of things you should talk to the mentee about. And when they look at this list, they're like, oh, I could, yeah, I can, okay, yeah, I can cover this, you know, in a 30-minute, 45-minute meeting. Make it easy and really build the confidence of the mentors. And that's going to go a long way. So I do this with the mentors, but I also do it with the mentoring champions. We do best practice presentations and so forth. Streamline the process. That falls into the grease the skids. Create dashboards. We have a promotion and mentorship dashboard. I keep track of all the mentorship that's going on in the whole institution, workshops and so forth. Can people get protected time? We don't do that. It's part of your job and it comes out of academic time. Same thing with salary. I get asked this, why should I mentor? Nobody's paying me to mentor. I don't know what they do at Yale, but yeah, I didn't think so. I've yet to find a department where they pay people to mentor. And then people also complain, you know, it's perceived as undervalued. There's no recognition for mentoring, so make it valued. We now have, most departments, probably yours, have a, you know, the residents vote for a teacher of the year, and they vote for a fellow of the year, and then they might vote for various other end of the year things. We now have mentor of the year, not just for the residents, but faculty mentor of the years. And we now have on an institutional level, distinguished faculty mentor of the year, which is the Dean's Honors Day, which is a big deal at NYU. There is the clinician of the year, the researcher of the year, the educator of the year, and the mentor of the year. And those are the 4 big prizes, and the entire world is there in cap and gowns. This is like a big deal, and it's for mentoring. And this is how you value mentorship, and people really are delighted to get involved in the process. This is a tough one. So Dr. B was hired out of your fellowship. So this is kind of a mentor-centric ones, but don't worry, I'm going to give you some mentee-centric ones too. And you had high hopes for her academic career as a clinician researcher, and you looked forward to serving as her mentor. She was a pretty lively fellow and was doing a lot. Now she seems to be enjoying the relationship and her clinical work, but she's resisting involvement in projects, committees, activities that are of value to the department or the institution. You've discussed with her your concerns about her lack of participation in activities necessary for her career advancement and future promotion. What could or should the mentor do? How hard should a mentor push a mentee with little motivation and frankly unclear abilities in these realms? Do you think they should push hard? No? I'm sorry, I saw you maybe. Never mind. And make a significant contribution to the department. Is it fair to ask someone to mentor if the mentee doesn't share traditional goals? I think so. So Dr. Harmati was saying, have the conversation and figure out why she seems to be different now as a junior faculty than she was as a resident. Do any of the residents have an idea? Do you have an opinion? Do you ever feel like you're being pushed in a direction you don't want to go? I don't know any of you, so there's no humiliation or embarrassment here. No. So yes, explore the reasons, explore whether an academic career is appropriate. Should she be moved to a clinical track? Now, I'm not really familiar with all of the tracks here at Yale, and apparently it's very complicated. But, you know, the traditional academic, Anna's laughing, the traditional academic tracks, there is an expectation for substantive clinical excellence and substantive work in some other realm. It could be pedagogical academic work, or it could be service to the department as a vice chair or a program director, people involved in education and other leadership roles, et cetera, but you're supposed to be doing something in addition. And maybe this person doesn't want to do that. Sometimes pushing is appropriate if you've explored what's going on in her life, and she might say, I just don't have confidence in this. And then you could say, well, I'll be supportive and we'll test the waters together and see if this works. But if it really doesn't work, then it's time for a different mentor, or perhaps no mentor, or you move them to a clinical track, et cetera. Is it fair to ask someone to mentor a mentee who doesn't share traditional goals? I would say yes, within a defined expectation and time commitment. I mean, you can't ask someone to waste their time mentoring someone who's just resistant. So mentorship program rollout, defining the need, identifying the participants, selling the value of mentorship. That's easy to sell, in my experience, to the mentees because people want to be mentored. It's daunting to face an academic career, and it's getting more daunting by the day, and we're all busier and busier. The workload now, I'll be honest with you, my workload clinically is higher than it's ever been in my career. And I've been doing this for 30 years. I mean, it's just a lot of cases. Identify potential mentors, recruiting mentors, equipping the mentors, giving them the resources that they need, the data they need to be good mentors, and then empowering and valorizing the mentors, as we discussed. Delineating program guidelines, designing a program that's ideal for your department. Making the matches is sort of, at the end of the day, what I do in radiology. I'm the mentoring champion in radiology. I meet with all of the section chiefs and division chiefs in the fall, usually September, October, and we go through the whole list. They are expected to check in with matches we made last year to make sure that the matches are flourishing, that the meetings are happening, that people don't want adjustments. Most of the time, everything's going smoothly. Sometimes the mentee wants to change for whatever reason. I actually have had a mentor who said, I just don't like this person. And fortunately, that's only been once in my career. But, you know, you do have to have a mutual chemistry and a respect and liking of each other. So you can't force these things. So you just make an adjustment. You find a different mentor. And then monitoring and Q&A, you know, that depends on the program that you've set up. I'm not going to focus on that right now. A minute about mentorship, sponsorship, and coaching, the definitions. Coaches talk to you, and they may be teaching you skills like active listening or negotiation or how to give feedback, conflict management, or whatever. Mentors talk with you, and they talk about your career, give you guidance and advice. Maybe they're going to aid in networking, but sponsors really are the ones that perhaps are going to propel your career outside of this personal relationship. Generally, the sponsors are influential senior people who can advocate for you, advance your visibility, facilitate opportunities, aid in networking. Many times, this is one person. Your mentor can also coach you, can also be a sponsor, but it doesn't have to be. So you might have your division chief or your chair might be your sponsor, whereas somebody else in the department is your mentor. But the bottom line is all of these people share the mutual goal of supporting you through your career development. So the difference is between sponsorship and mentorship. You need to talk more at national conferences versus I recommended you for giving a lecture here or there. That's sponsorship. For some reason, that's making me go backwards. So what does a mentee seek in a mentor? To understand the pathways and expectations for a career, where and when to focus time and energy on different stages in the career, understanding that this changes. So what you're doing in year 1 to 3 as a junior faculty is going to be different than years 5 through 8 as a junior faculty. What's a time sink and what isn't? And that worthwhile things as a junior faculty, maybe writing case reports or small case series, is worthwhile as a junior faculty, but not worthwhile when you're at year 8 or whatever. Coming up with a strategy to building your portfolio, understanding what are the expectations in different career tracks, not only advice on what you should be doing, but coaching on how to achieve these goals. So this is, oops, got to stop doing that. So this is a what versus how. So it's helpful. Any advice is helpful. So it's helpful if the mentor says, you really, at this stage, you need more first author publications. But what's really helpful is, let's think about how you can achieve this. Maybe you need to expand your group of collaborators. Maybe you're submitting to the wrong journals, and we need to refine that. Maybe we need to identify funding sources. Maybe you need more focus in your research. Whatever. There's a host of things you can do other than saying you need more first author publications. Another example: you need to establish your national or international reputation because you're going to need that for promotion. Well, that's good advice. It's good to know. But what's really helpful is, so let's think about how we can achieve this in the next year or two. Host and invite the grand rounds. Linda, you shouldn't have hosted. I'm just kidding. Go to national meetings, and especially the small meetings. So I'm a chest radiologist. Society of Thoracic Radiology is a relatively small meeting, and everybody seems to know everybody. Don't go out to dinner with your colleagues from Yale. You can go out to dinner in New Haven with your colleagues from Yale. None of us do that, except for last night. But mostly, I mean, I live in New York. We don't really go out to dinner together, but we go to RSNA and we all go out to dinner together. It's stupid. Go out to dinner with people that you don't know, people you've met during the day, people you sat next to in one of the conference, people with whom you've been on a panel, a lecturer who gave a talk that's interesting to you. If you are a junior person, go up to the podium. I know this is hard. I'm sort of an introvert, believe it or not, but say, that was a really good talk. I'm Georgeann McGuinness. I'm from NYU, and I'm interested in, I'm working in blah, blah, blah that you just talked about. That person will remember you. They will. And when it comes time for going up for promotion, you need outside referees. These are the kinds of relationships that are going to be necessary when you put together your list of outside referees. You just got to do it. And another very good way to network is join your societies in your field and get on committees. And it's not that hard. Most societies are actually begging for people to be on committees. You serve on a committee, you do a good job, you show up on the Zoom for the meetings, you put your hand in the air for some arduous task that nobody else wants. Your committee chair will remember it. And that is a good person to ask to write a referee letter. So you got to start thinking about this. I tell people, keep looking at the back of the room, and you guys are all so young, but when you go to a meeting, just jot down in your phone potential referees, because when you have to actually come up with a list of 7 or 10 referees for promotion, you don't want to be like scratching your head at that point. You want a list of 15 or 20 names that you can start editing. So where do you begin? Before the meeting, you should know a little bit about the mentee. Their CV really is the only start. You need to have a CV, of course, but ask them what's their faculty appointment track, You should know the answer. You can look it up. I'm sure Yale has a database. Do they know the answer? This happened to me yesterday. I was telling a story where faculty, I sent out a survey. She's like, I can't answer the survey. That's not my track. And I'm like, well, actually, that is your track. Ask for a personal statement. It was so sad, but faculty that have been on at NYU for 5 years, they don't even know what track they're on. How can they possibly know what the expectations and metrics for promotion are if they don't even know what track they're on? So I'm sure it's the same here. And I've heard that Yale has a very, I don't want to say convoluted, but a challenging series of academic tracks. Personal statements, I give a whole workshop on this really quick. It could be even 3 lines. Who I am and how I got here. What do I do? Where I want to go? 3 sentences. It ought to be more than 3 sentences. Could be 3 paragraphs. Don't reiterate your whole CV. I've got your CV. Who I am and how I got here. What do I do? Where I want to go? And you can start working on this. But the minute you start, you have a framework, you have a skeleton document. It just makes it less scary to have to write a personal statement when you actually do have to write a personal statement. First meeting. Explore expectations, mentees' goals. I don't mean goals for their career. I just mean goals for the mentorship process. It's worth it to understand together what are both of your expectations, mentors and mentees. Sometimes mentees have very exaggerated notions about what the mentor can do, the service the mentor can provide for them. Remember my document, it's bidirectional. You as the mentees have to give something back to the mentor. You have to make it a positive and enjoyable process for the mentors too. So you got to discuss this early on. Failure to do so can be problematic. Establish the cadence for your meetings. How often are we going to meet? How long are the meetings going to be? Are we doing them in person? Are we doing them over Zoom? I have some mentees that, they're young parents and we meet at 9 o'clock at night, which I don't love, but I do as a former young parent or parent of youngsters. Sometimes that's the best time to meet. Bath time is over, kids are in bed. If we have to meet, you've been on my committee for the STR. We used to meet at 8 o'clock at night. Shoot me now, but that's what we did. And then, establish what's acceptable and what isn't. I mean, people popping in my office door is absolutely acceptable for quick questions, for time urgent questions, but unexpected, lengthy conversations about every little thing probably isn't. I'm a huge time management person, so I sometimes schedule meetings like at 8:45 or 8:20, knowing full well I have a meeting in another building across campus at 9. And I'm like, I gotta go, but throw your coat on. We're just gonna walk down First Avenue and we can talk. And I do it on purpose so that I get another 10 minutes out of the meeting. And that's 10 minutes I've saved out of my day. So whatever it takes, but mentorship has to happen. We're still in the first meeting, discuss their role in the section or division or department. Where do they see themselves? Are they satisfied with the role? Are they satisfied with what they project their trajectory to be? Is there opportunity to advance? Do they feel like they've hit a wall? Is it a dead end? What roles might they like? If they do research, it's good to know what kind of support they're getting in terms of protected time, funding, administrative or statistical. I mean, somebody coming to you and saying, I want to write an R01 is great because it's very aspirational, but is it possible given that they have a half a day of academic time a week or a half a day a month or whatever? I mean, it has to be realistic and you need to know these things. Explore together possible career paths, understanding that this is going to evolve. Ask them, I love this question, who do you admire or envy or see as an appealing role model? I laughed when he introduced me, who knew? And then try to have them define and articulate their ambitions, because that could be very helpful. It doesn't mean that they're going to achieve this in the next couple of years, but you don't really know where people want to go. And it may be an untraditional, less traditional way. So generational issues, there's been so much written about mentorship and millennials. So I tried to write one that kind of addressed this. So now this is a mentee-based thing. You've been assigned one of the department's most senior, high-profile faculty, and you're thrilled that you feel that this person is going to provide valuable guidance. It soon becomes apparent to you that you don't share values. He's a workaholic, not someone you could embrace as a role model. He seems to have no life outside of work, and he brags about the long hours he puts in. You sense he is disapproving of your desire for work for home days and that you took paternity leave and you feel like you've disappointed him due to his perception of your lack of commitment. So how do you approach this issue, which seems very personal and judgmental? And could an early discussion of goals for the mentorship have helped? I've sort of got an eye on the clock, so I think I'm just going to go to the next slide. But if anyone has anything to say on this topic? Well, an early discussion of career goals really is essential. Careers may evolve. This person who right now doesn't want to work 15 or 16-hour days, that may change in the future, or they may not have to do that. But at this stage in their life, this is where they're putting their values, and that's probably the wrong mentor. So a forthright examination and discussion about this could dictate appropriate mentorship needs, and probably an adjustment in the mentorship is called for, and that's what I would do. But you have to have this discussion rather than have the mentor grinding their teeth and saying this person is going nowhere, whereas the person is going lots of places, but it's not in a traditional way. So you've got to match mindsets, immediate goals, long-term goals. Creating strong dyads is critical for the success. If you have achieved a good mentorship-mentee match, where do you go? Plot the means to get to the end, but you have to begin with the end in mind. So you do the gap analysis. Is this person, they tell you they want to be an X, Y, or Z. Well, based on what they're doing today, are they gaining the skills, the activities, the experiences? Are they meeting the right people to get to where they want to go? And if they're not, then you've got to do the gap analysis and get them on some of those committees, get them networking with the right people, set goals and timelines. This is something that's hard to do. There's all sorts of different ways you can set goals, but the bottom line is mentorship isn't, to be mentored and to actually progress in an academic career isn't that easy. And we're all working hard, but it's very easy to get up every day, come in, read your cases and read them well and be a great musculoskeletal radiologist, but 5 years will pass before you know it. And you're going to look up and say, but I'm not exactly where I want to be, or I'm not progressing in the way I want to progress. So you should do some internal thoughts about where you want to go and set a goal. If 2 years from now, I want to have given a talk, fill in the blank, or I want to have written this many papers, you've got to set goals and stick to them. And your mentor can help you do that. Unmet goals cannot just be blown off. Well, you told me back in October that you were going to have the abstract submitted to the Society of Gastrointestinal Radiology in February, and you were going to have the manuscript written by the end of June. Why didn't that happen? And it's hard as a mentor to do that. But comfort mentorship, the pat on the head, you're doing great, keep up the good work, that is not good mentorship, and you're not helping anybody by doing that. So if goals are unmet, they have to be discussed. What are the obstacles? They could be legitimate. My partner got run over by a bus. There are reasons why things don't happen, but it can't just be, well, I thought I was going to do that, but I didn't. Not good enough. You got to push people a little bit. And that's a hard thing. This is the kind of thing that you've got to coach mentors on. You got to give workshops and kind of empower them. Be prepared to give difficult feedback, and you can have sessions on giving and receiving feedback. You have to be prepared to receive and internalize difficult feedback. But you got to stay positive through the whole process. So agree on methods to enhance the process, send agenda items in advance, agree on how far in advance you should send documents that you want your mentor to critique. You have to maintain an open dialogue. You have to be honest and forthcoming as to your needs as a mentee. You can't just hold it all in. I mean, maybe there's things going on in your life and you have to say to the mentor, I can't meet with you in the next 2 months because of X, Y, or Z, but just be forthright about what's going on. Keep in mind that everybody has nothing but positive intentions in this process. What are the boundaries and limits? This is one of these dicey areas. It's best, in my opinion, to have candid conversations about potentially sensitive subjects as the relationship evolves and you have sort of developed a trust and a sense that you can have these conversations, but you have to use your EQ, IQ, and your intuition a little bit about this. Again, understand that nobody is mentoring you with anything other than the best intentions and the hopes that they're going to advance your career. I need to add this to my slide. Mentors are not tormentors. That's a different breed. They're here to help you. So again, it's all about communication, candor, respect, but we all have a little EQ, IQ. So mentors have to feel empowered to approach sensitive topics. So here's, I was talking, so, mentorship of URIM residents, trainees, faculty is always tough because there is a lot of literature that would espouse the value of having URIM faculty mentor URIM faculty. But the reality is we don't have enough at this stage URIM mid and senior level people to do this mentorship. So in my opinion, there is some value, especially for the mentors, to have a mix where somebody who isn't a member of a URIM group mentors a URIM group. I was reading an article about this and this quote stuck with me. It was a man and he said, my wife, my partner, is a doctor, but it wasn't until I mentored a woman that I really understood the sexism and the gender discrimination in medicine. And meanwhile, he's having dinner with a female doctor every night, which just emphasizes the point that husbands never listen to you. But mentees have to, so anyway, so back to my little story here. So I was talking to a friend and a colleague, because I sit on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and I was talking about this issue, and I said, yeah, these are hard things to bring up. So like in your professional life, you might experience microaggressions, and if you want to talk about it, and the person looked at me and said, not you might experience, you will experience. And I'm like, oh God, I'm glad I talked to you about that. Because I mean, that, that's something that I wouldn't have really known to do. But you say, if you want to talk about it, I'm open to it. But then you take the lead from the person. If it's a person that has some other thing going on that you are aware of, it's up to them. It's up to the mentee, the degree to which they want to talk about these things. But the mentee should also feel empowered to discuss sensitive topics. I'm struggling with work-life integration for X, Y, or Z reason. I have a neuroatypical child and we're trying to get them into school, or I have something else going on, that it's okay for them to let the mentor know that. So it makes sense that this semester or this year, while they're trying to deal with a child or a partner or something that's or they've got things going on, I've got a very serious medical condition, whatever, they should feel comfortable talking to you about these things. So here's another scenario. Your mentee, this is supporting life changes. Your mentee's productivity has declined. He's taken a bunch of family leaves. His mother was diagnosed and died from melanoma. And this mentee's mother provided a lot of support for the mentee's family, childcare, cooking, household, etc. Your mentee appears exhausted, harried, missing deadlines, calling in sick, all sorts of things. What should you do as their mentor? To what extent should mentors have a role in helping mentees with work-life balance? How do you broach this topic, and should you broach this topic? So the scope of a mentorship relationship, in my opinion, you should know about your mentee's life, because this does impact, we're talking work-life integration. Everybody, 15, 30 years ago, nobody talked about this, but now your mentee's life is something that is talked about at work if they want to. And that would include children, their partner's needs. Medical issues are kind of dicey. Some people don't want to share that. You follow their lead. But mentors should know about support resources, childcare, elder care. Is somebody taking care of an ailing parent and they're in another state, or they need to get them into a nursing home, or whatever's going on? You should, as the mentor, know about support services at your institution, mental health support, or at least where to find this information. Details of family medical leave and other work-life integration support benefits. For those who are mentoring people on the tenure track, what about tenure track probation clock extensions? I mean, I'm shocked when I hear about people on the tenure track who have children, have a new child, and they didn't get an extension on their tenure probation clock because their mentors didn't tell them to apply for it. It's inexcusable. But all of this, but it's also nice to have a friendly relationship if that's the kind of a relationship the mentee seems to want. I write notes after the meeting. They got a new puppy, and then I can say, oh, how's the puppy doing? Are any of your shoes, surviving the new puppydom, whatever. So it's good to do that, but it's important to keep it all together. So this last little bit, as I end my talk, is about how mentorship might end, which is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It's hopefully a little entertaining, but it's real because mentorship isn't a lifelong relationship necessarily. So there's mentee-centric issues. Some of them are, the mentee isn't holding up their end of the contract. They're not listening and internalizing. They're missing deadlines. They don't show up for meetings or they don't schedule meetings. They just are given all the vibes that they don't value the process, or the mentee has progressed and they don't really need that type of mentorship. That's the good thing. Mentor-centric is basically the same. The mentor's not showing up, they're not invested, or the mentor's career is taking off and they just don't have the availability that they had, or other things are going on in their lives, which are either professional or not professional, but they just can't keep up their end of the bargain. Or the mentor feels the mentee's better served with another mentor, or it's bidirectional. The chemistry's off, nobody's enjoying the process, and they both want out. So when it comes to ending relationships, I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you're all so young, you probably don't even know who this is. Does anyone know who this is? Yay. This is a great movie. This is a classic movie. Dr. Goodman, this morning I gave a talk and I said something about 15 minutes of fame. And I turned to your residents. I said, does anyone know who Andy Warhol is? One person raised their hand. So the good ending is goals are achieved. The mentee attain the mutually desired level of independence. They're satisfied, you're gratified and proud. And the bad is they haven't achieved the goals. They're not ready for independence. You feel a sense of failure and their success is ambiguous. And the ugly is there's rancor and resentment. There's no possibility of future collegiality or collaboration, etc. So I'm going to have to rush through this, but I kind of came up with somewhat, hopefully humorous, the good mentee who's ready for independence, I would call the mentee graduate. They've done a good job. It's time to disengage with gratitude, take pride in them and to their job well done. And the kinds of things you say to them are important. You've progressed. You're coming to all of the conclusions that I'm telling you independently of me. You really, frankly, are independent. You could be your mentor yourself, and I'm really proud and confident in you. And you demonstrate this by putting them up for jobs, putting them up for committees, recommending them for leadership roles. Let them know that they are graduates of your mentorship program and ready to move on. The mentee who doesn't want to stop being a mentee, I call this the barnacle mentee. You have to explore why. They don't crave independence and they want to stay attached to you. So in many cases, they're just lacking confidence. They see you as highly successful and they'll feel like they'll benefit drafting off of your success. So it's really critical that you explain that independence is important to them. If every paper they write have you as a senior author, at the end of the day, people think that they're not independent of you. And we've had that happen I sit on the promotions committee and tenure committee at my institution, and this is an issue. So you explore together a support system. Tell them you will be a collaborative colleague forever, but you'll be in that role as an equal, no longer as the former mentor. Give them reassurance that they are ready to be launched, and then you scrape the barnacles off your hull. The good mentee you want to pass off, they're doing great, they're developing, but it's time, there's diminishing returns either for you or for them. Many of them are valid, they could benefit from the skills and expertise of someone else, or you can't meet your obligations as a mentor. Emphasize that you're disengaging, but it doesn't mean that it's a failed relationship that needs change, that maybe their career goals have changed, whatever. You could present them with a new mentor, might be a good idea, maybe not. This one I call the mentee you don't want to pass along, the Eliza Doolittle. That's from My Fair Lady. Once again, I'm not even going to ask because the residents won't know. But Eliza Doolittle was a flower girl who Henry Higgins decided he could turn into a lady, but it's actually based on the story of Pygmalion, an old Greek story, an ancient Greek story. But you got to wonder here, are there subliminal conflicts of interest? Is your work, and this is more in a research realm, I actually put this together for a talk for researchers, is your work progressing because of this person's efforts? And is it going to suffer if they leave? Are you reluctant to have them establish independence? Do they work in your lab? And the productivity of your lab has a lot to do with what they're doing. And there also may be personal connections. So Do you feel possessive of the talents you've developed in this person, and are you reluctant to launch them? This requires some hard self-reflection. We're not, this is beyond the scope of this talk, but it's kind of interesting. And then there's the hot potato mentee. They're not progressing, they're not receptive. You feel they're wasting their time, and you don't want to pass them on to your colleague because it's a hot potato and your colleague will be very unhappy with you. You don't want to foist them on your colleague. So the hard conversation is it them or is it you? Some people travel through life without mentors, so you have to talk to them. Maybe this is a wake-up call. Maybe this is going to be, when you say this to them, maybe it'll be the dawn of a new era in productive mentorship, or maybe not. But you have to have the talk. So you have to candidly ask them, would a mentor with a different style be better for you? Maybe this isn't working out, but you have to listen. And the reasons have to be valid and convincing, and be prepared, because it may be very hard for you. First of all, it'll be hard for the mentee to speak honestly about the fact that they don't value your mentorship, or they don't align with your values, or they think you're in, whatever. You have to listen really carefully, because this is an opportunity. Feedback is good for all of us, no matter what stage we're on. And as you get higher and higher up the food chain, you get less and less feedback from certain realms. And it's really good to get feedback throughout your career. Be receptive to it, internalize it, listen to it. So if a junior faculty tells me that, they find my advice unhelpful, or my manner abrasive or something, hopefully I'm going to listen and internalize that. Yes, I'm a busy person, but there's no excuse for being abrupt with people, on the phone or whatever you're going to be hearing. So I really got to hurry here. Burning bridges. Here's the pitfalls. It doesn't have to be acrimonious. It shouldn't be. And you have to remember that these people they're going to remain in your department. Maybe they're going to leave your department, but they're going to be colleagues in the field. It's another pitfall is failing to make clear why it's happening. You've got to make it clear. It'll lessen the likelihood of hurt feelings and anger. You do want to document, note to self. I met with Dr. Boycell, and we had a heartfelt conversation, and he said this or that, and I said this or that, and we agreed mutually to end the relationship. Note to self, put it in the file, because these things can turn into, grievances, and God forbid, even a lawsuit. Don't get talked back into a relationship if you're genuinely convinced it is over. And on the flip side, don't fail to be receptive if there are valid explanations for why things aren't working. Make a clean break. Don't drag it out. Do it professionally. Don't do it over the phone. It's like breaking up with someone. Schedule a meeting. Do it over coffee. Do whatever. But this is a person with whom you have a relationship. You have to be respectful of that. Be sensitive. Understand that there may be hurt feelings and a sense of abandonment, but you are entitled to end the relationship on either end. If you've tried your best, it should be mutual learning, but there should be enjoyment. Mentoring is not torture for either people. And if it feels like torture, there's something wrong. There's no room for resentment in mentorship. If you're angry or resentful, there's an issue, there's a problem. It's good to talk to the person in charge. You have a chief mentoring officer in Dr. Haramati. If you're in a mentoring relationship that isn't working, Dr. Haramati is probably the person to talk to in a candid way about what's working and what's not, and the corrections can be made. Sometimes the mentorship has to end, and that's absolutely fine. So the goals of a mentorship program: creating a nurturing work environment. This enhances recruitment and retention. When I'm interviewing new faculty and junior faculty and trainees, they're always delighted to hear we have a very robust mentorship program. It advances professional growth and achievement on an individual level, which absolutely strengthens the department. It absolutely strengthens the institution. It enhances career satisfaction, which of course helps with retention. But we're developing the next generation of leaders. So it's critical for individual career development, but it's also critical to our field. And I think that's a lot of what I get out of mentorship, because at the end of the day, and I've written a lot of papers, and I promise you, nobody's even reading the papers I wrote 20 years ago, and nobody cares about the papers I wrote 30 years ago. So my legacy in this field, if I'm vain enough to think I have a legacy, my legacy is going to be the people that I mentored. And that I consider a privilege. That's going to be my enduring legacy. So I'm done. And I'm sorry I went over. I was